I started asking, well, what else is out there? What's going on? And then once you open that door, once that Pandora's box is open, you can't unsee that.
Yeah, you can't.
Especially when you go overseas.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of HPG Engage The Podcast. It is my pleasure that I have Dr. Olivia Lesslar, CEO of Lifespan Medicine Australia, who specializes in functional and preventative medicine. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you very much for sitting down with me today.
Yeah,
Have
pleasure.
a quick chat about your career, what the inspiration was, what you studied, and just how you came to be the person that you are today. Obviously, you've recently been featured on Forbes 50, under 50.
No, the New York City Journal.
Oh, the New York City Journal. And what was the feeling of that? How did that go?
Well, it was, obviously I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that it was an opportunity for me to take stock about what I was doing as well. Because they ask you questions about your career and what you've been doing, and you have to go through and
pretty much like what we're going to be doing today.
Yeah. And, it also made me realize what it was in the last few years that got me to where I am now, and to make sure that I continue to do that. And that is travel, meet with amazing doctors, learn from them, go in there with a sense of curiosity, wonder. There is no place for arrogance
and complacency.
Yeah. And the last 2 years where I haven't actually been traveling that much, it's been great because I've met amazing doctors here in Australia.
Yes, that's a very good point.
Borders have opened, and now I'm actually going to head off again for a couple of months to Europe. But I'm really excited to meet up with more doctors here, because there is some great medicine that's happening in Australia.
And do you find that this is not to do the pod, but do you find that there is a lot more great medicine happening in Australia due to the fact that borders had closed for so long and people are having to kind of stay within the realms of the borders? Or do you feel like it's just always been going on, but you yourself are only starting to realize that?
Yeah, we do have this thing where all the fun stuff is happening overseas, right? They tend to, in America, for example, they tend to be a little bit more adventurous, let's just say. But and in general, yes, in the UK and Australia, it does tend to be a little bit more mainstream, which is amazing for the majority of patients, majority of practitioners, of course.
Yeah.
But when you want to find new and exciting adventures, new and exciting possibilities, you do have to color outside the lines a little bit.
You do.
Or find people who are venturing outside the conventions. And so in general, Australia tends to be a bit mainstream, but there are pockets of very exciting medicine.
There is.
Trailblazers here.
Beautiful. So just to start off, let's take it all the way back. Where did your passion for all things medicine and healthcare come from?
So my dad is an integrative vet, right? And he's actually a very famous vet. He has his own TV show and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, what's the TV show?
It's in Singapore. He's at a few, actually.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure which one he has right now.
Amazing.
But, they follow him around.
Yeah.
He's always been very innovative. He likes his toys. He's always traveling to different parts of Asia to find out what they're doing. So he was doing, stem cell stuff with Japan and South Korea. He was doing micro open heart surgery with surgeons in Japan, like, open heart surgery on rabbits.
That's crazy.
But that sense of adventure, asking what's next and what else. I grew up with that.
Yeah.
I could kind of considered that the way things were. Now, my mum got sick with breast cancer when I was 15, and I saw how my dad did everything and more. So, she had chemo, radio, she had mastectomy, all the rest of it. But it was, what else is out there? And he researched and researched and researched, and he was doing all sorts. Now, my mum didn't make it, but to feel the commitment
that he had,
that really imprinted itself on me.
That's beautiful.
So, when you become a doctor and you see how sick people are and how not little, but how constrained their choices are, it's bed rest,
Mm.
um, medications, and then before you know it, especially when I was in GP land, you start putting patients on more and more medications. Some of the medications are for side effects from the first medications,
Yeah.
but nobody really teases or anyway. So I started asking, well, what else is out there? What's going on? And then once you open that door, once that Pandora's box is open, you can't unsee that,
Yeah, you can't.
especially when you go overseas. Because a lot of things that we take as, oh, that's quackery or, that's no, no, no. When you go overseas, like hypothermia therapy, for example, fever therapy,
Yeah.
in Germany and Japan, it's standard of care in the hospitals there. So yeah, it's eye opening when you travel. Mm.
Amazing. And that's great that you got such a good experience having your father in your life so much. So what did you end up then studying in
Mm.
order to, I guess, be more adventurous and to explore the world from a medical standpoint? What was the
Well,
undergrad? What did you
actually,
decide to do?
I
Did you
I
do business or something?
no, I actually traveled the world first. So
Okay.
after mum died, I was very lost,
Yeah.
and I wound up backpacking.
I know.
Going
I
overseas.
can appreciate
I
that.
did. I backpacked Australia twice, and I was very very lost. And I I was actually on scholarship at the end of in high school, but mum died in year 12, and I wasn't at school for 3 months, and I didn't get the grades to wind up going into medicine like I had planned.
Yeah.
So I freefalled a little bit. And when I finally decided to go back to to go back to uni,
Hmm.
I was 26 years old.
Wow.
And I did a Bachelor of International Relations. I majored in French and diplomacy, and I used the scores there to then get into med. So I was a mature age student.
Yeah, you did a full you didn't go
Yeah, yeah.
the normal path.
No. Um, and the idea was to do international relations and then to do medicine so that I could do third world medicine. The
Hmm.
idea was always to travel
Yeah.
or to be able to travel with whatever it is that I decided to do. Then once you get into medicine, it's not actually that easy to start doing third world medicine, especially when, you start realizing that the politics of it all can be
Mm.
quite soul destroying.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then almost fell into what I did do.
Mm.
And it's been an amazing journey, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So it was actually 2019, I was working in GP practice, and I realized that getting a lot of I was getting a lot of success with patients when
Yeah.
I was talking to them about their diet, their mindset, their lifestyle, basic stuff that, to be fair, the RACGP, the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, does tell us.
Yeah.
Talk to your patients about lifestyle and diet first, right? But they don't actually tell you what that really means.
What to even ask, I
Mm.
guess.
But I was starting to explore that with patients, and I was just getting so much back, and I realized that that's what patients really wanted,
Mm.
as opposed to another script.
Yeah.
And I went to a research symposium in Sydney. Love research, love reading journals. So I went to this research symposium, and I was just, exposed to these amazing doctors from the US who were talking about things that were definitely out of the guidelines.
Mm.
But it's not just what they were saying, it's how they were pulling information together.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to learn how to do better.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I happened to be speaking to one of the keynote speakers. Um, we were talking about heat shock proteins. I just happened to have done research on this before I went to the symposium. I didn't even know he was going to be talking about it.
Yeah, you just
It was just,
serendipity.
it was serendipity.
Yeah.
And in his talk, he was asking, what else induces heat shock proteins. And I looked around and I said, oh, cryotherapy. And he goes, no, it's called heat shock proteins for a reason. I was like,
Mm.
oh. Saw him later on, and I said, oh, do you remember me? This is the paper that the cryotherapy comment was from, and it was, a high profile journal. And he looked at it, and then we had a bit of a chat. And he said, you should come to the US and work with me. So I said, okay. So
Oh,
I quit work.
just
Quit work.
like sweet,
Went to,
gone.
yeah,
That's amazing.
3 weeks, 4 weeks, I think it was. And I was on a plane to the US.
And how was that experience while you in the US working alongside him?
Well, it was very exciting, very interesting. It was also quite loose, immediate, how amazing it was just to kind of slip in there.
Mm-hmm.
I would constantly go back to Australia to have to earn more money.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing like drive around after hours GP work,
Yeah, yeah.
to then earn enough money to go back to the US.
Okay.
And then I would see patients when I was here. Because I'm not registered in the US, I was just considered a health coach,
Okay,
right?
that's a very good point. Yes, that's a very
So
good point.
so I was doing it like that, but we would spend weeks like going on research holidays, just sitting down and writing papers and discussing difficult patients.
Mm-hmm.
So I was living in New York, and he was in White Plains,
Mm-hmm.
Tarrytown, and I'd commute if we needed to catch up. It was just he was a bit eccentric,
Mm-hmm.
so life was all over the place. But I'm kind of used to that anyway, so it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was New York, and then from there he actually introduced me to another doctor who worked in LA, because I happened to be there for some other reason. So he said, "Look, you got to catch up with this guy. I wrote a book with him a few years ago. Great guy, blah blah blah." I'm like, okay. Uh, he wasn't in LA when I went there, but we wound up having a chat on the phone.
Yeah.
3 hours later, he said, "You should come work for me in LA." So
That's
I'm,
amazing.
so I'm sure.
Yes.
I mean, because my time with New York was coming to a close anyway.
Yeah. It was like this is again serendipity just falling right in front of you. I think it's amazing how your curiosity and your willingness to learn throughout your whole career has just been landing you in such amazing positions where you're getting to learn more and to explore more about medicine away from kind of the mainstream.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, we should never forget, of course, that mainstream medicine is mainstream for a reason.
Exactly.
But what else?
But yeah, there's still a lot out there
That's
to
right.
learn. And that brings me into lifespan medicine.
Mm.
You're the CEO. So just give us a little bit of an insight as to what exactly is lifespan medicine Australia. What are some of the goals and what does your business actually focus on?
Okay. So this guy in LA, his name is Dr. Chris Renner. He's a legend in the preventative medicine world.
Hmm.
His company is Lifespan Medicine,
Okay.
USA.
Okay.
hmm
Okay.
So I said yes. I got offered the job. I started working for them, and then in March came back to Australia. March 2020 came back
Hmm.
to Australia to sort out my visa, and then that was COVID. So I never I never left Australia.
No.
I mean, I still work for Lifespan
Yeah.
USA. I look after the patients, the American patients who wind up coming to Australia um, for work. So
Hmm.
Lifespan USA is a concierge company. We look after high net worth individuals, business people,
Yeah.
celebrities, that kind of thing. And so, because I was stuck here and I was basically doing Lifespan Medicine USA in Australia, I then said, "Look, can I just set it?"
Open up a practice
And they
here.
said,
Yeah.
"Yeah." So that
And
was
that
it.
was it.
That was it. So the idea was to sort of advance concierge medicine
Hmm.
in Australia. And it's amazing
One
how,
question,
yeah,
did you ever think of even doing that pre-COVID? Was that even a thought, or was the situation that you were dealt like this is actually a good idea? There's opportunity here for me to
was a good idea.
was good. No, not anymore.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It's so different because what look, lifespan medicine essentially is personalized,
Hmm.
preventative, concierge medicine. So I look after you in context of
Of
you,
you
right? And not only do I try to deal with what's going on with you right now, but I try and prevent issues from creeping up
in the
later
future.
on,
Yeah.
by way of looking at your DNA SNPs and, biological age
You're
versus
looking at
chronological age.
you're looking at each patient from a holistic point of view and
Yes,
assessing their whole lifestyle
yes,
and not one size fits all every time you see a patient kind of thing.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? But it's I don't have the support network that we have in LA. So there we've got, PAs, physicians, assistants, and we have, client care coordinators, and we have a pharmacy. I mean, we
Yeah, okay. You have a
don't have that
full,
here.
yeah,
So, I was going gung ho, and things were really looking up, but the work just started to overwhelm me.
I can imagine.
And so I closed my books. I still look after some really, really great concierge patients. And the, the oldest of which has been with me now since I got to Australia. So almost over 2 years now.
Okay.
But, in that time, I've actually met a lot of other businesses, a lot of um, practitioners. And so Lifespan Medicine now is my company within which I'm able to do my research, look after my small handful of concierge patients. But because I guess I'm not yet committed to any other clinic,
Mm-hmm.
even I have been asked, but it's just right now I like the freedom
You're
of what
like
I
you're like
have.
where you are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm basically contracting to different places, and it's
Okay.
given me so much freedom. So in other words, I was just saying to you before we started the podcast, um, next Tuesday I leave for Europe for
Mm.
2 months. That's it.
Yeah.
I can
And
I
how does
can
that
just
work
go.
in terms of your patients then? I'm assuming you may do some stuff just virtually then, just
Yeah,
across Zoom. Yeah.
yeah. So my patients who need to see me again, I'll do Zoom. Otherwise, they can wait till I get back because I have no overheads. I don't have my own clinic, so I don't have
Mm-hmm.
any overheads. I've been able to save really well, and going for conferences means, they're all tax deductible conferences, and
Amazing.
it's the freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So up till now, I was not working sort of 5 days in a clinic. I'd work 2 days a week in one clinic, and then one day a fortnight in another, and one day a month in another. And so for me to say, hey, I'm going away for 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
for some places that was literally just, okay, I won't be coming in for those, you know, 8 days,
Yeah, exactly.
4 days.
And it's amazing how, again, it goes back to you studying at uni, international studies,
Relations, yeah.
international relations, and the idea that you wanted to travel while being curious and learning, and then how it's just
Exactly.
done full circle back,
Yeah.
even post COVID, that again, you're able to have your business, um, influencing and enhancing patients' lives on a daily basis, but also able to go away and learn from other people within the healthcare industry on an international level. So it's all done, obviously done very much a full circle, and you're living the life that you'd actually envision for yourself.
Yes. And that's why honestly I promise I practice gratitude
Yes,
every day because
every day you
I
got to.
yeah, because I know that, and I kind of have now sort of decided to settle into an area of expertise which I basically practiced, but I hadn't realized how richly it coalesced into something which is an actual entity, and that is
Mm.
psychoneuroimmunology. S-
Just
Yeah.
explain what that
So
is.
psycho,
Mm-hmm.
neuro, brain. So psycho,
Yep,
mind, neuro, brain, immunology, your immune system, and how the three are interlinked.
interlinked. Yeah, okay.
Everybody knows, oh, be careful of stress, you can get sick.
Yeah, for sure.
But why?
Mind over matter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, but why? Because the actual biochemical cascades that happens is fascinating, and it really is mind over matter.
Hmm.
But you just have to know how to harness it in an appropriate way, right? And so, I work with a professor of immunology, professor of allergy up in Queensland, and in his allergy clinic, we actually do see, right, patients who have poor sleep, they will have more anxiety the next day. Their anxiety gets worse, their allergies get worse,
Hmm.
things like that. And that's where I've started to settle into some sort of like a specialty type of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to be doing a master's next year at Sydney University because I'm
Amazing.
I'm really determined now to go down this road.
Go a little bit deeper.
Mm.
That actually brings me on to my next point. So we're obviously in a point in society where people are starting to be a little bit more empowered when it comes to taking care of their own health, which is great. Why do you think that that mindset for people in today's day and age is so important? And when did you personally see that kind of transition where people weren't just willing to just go and just, okay, I'm gonna just take this Panadol because I've got a sore head.
Mm.
Now they're kind of reevaluating themselves and it's like, why would I have a sore head? Am I stressed at work? Is this argument with my girlfriend or my partner the reason behind this kind of like physical pain in my head? So
Mm.
what do you think? When do you think that transition happened? Or when
So,
did you see it happen?
so I think there's always obviously been a pocket of the population who've been interested in health and they listen to podcasts, and it's always sort of been like biohackers,
Mm-hmm.
Ben Greenfield, who've got a lot of clout in this area. But it's actually been the rise, I think, the rise of podcasts and social media
Mm.
from left of field or um, broad minded practitioners, doctors, and scientists.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, Rhonda Patrick, like these guys they have the credibility, they've got the credibility markers, they've got their MD behind their name or whatever it may be. And not only do they have a podcast, but they're great podcasters.
Yeah.
They're great communicators, and that's been the difference, I think, because you can't swing a cat now without someone.
Someone in your comments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Calling you out if you've said something wrong.
That too, but
Yeah.
I it's just amazing how many people know about these amazing scientists and doctors, and they happen to also be those who are extremely curious
Mm-hmm.
and who are asking whys and who are pushing against mainstream and guidelines, especially if those things need to be agitated just that little bit to make sure that it's doing the best for all patients.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
And I think it's that, and I think it's been the last 2 years that
Amazing.
I've really seen a huge shift, with this.
I think especially because so many people are in lockdown as well,
Yeah,
and so many
exactly.
people have their opinions and everything that was happening in the world. I think people actively started using Dr. Google and figuring out immunology, figuring out is this going to affect me long term. So yeah, I think people had a lot more time over the past 2 years just to delve in a little bit deeper. But I want to talk a little bit about the rise in chronic disease and its kind of toll on the healthcare sector. What do you think's the best way to combat this? Because obviously there is an aspect where there's kind of a duality when it comes to chronic disease that if you have a pain somewhere else, more than likely there's something else that's wrong with you that's actually causing that.
Mm.
So how do you think we combat this? And I guess we can even delve into the one of your specialties, which is functional medicine,
Mm.
and how everyone's different and one aspect of your body can actually affect the other.
Yeah. Okay. So, so I like to say that I love dealing with complex chronic conditions
Hmm. And why do you like to say that?
because they're usually patients who have been through the medical ringer
Hmm.
and
Nothing's really helped.
no,
Yeah,
right? They're taking loads of medications which are dampening the symptoms, which in the short term is
fine.
fine,
But
but in the longer term, the patients themselves know that all that's happening is they're increasing the number of medications they're on, or the dose, or
mm,
both, and you can see the road you're on, and the end of the road is not where you want to be. So I deal with complex chronic conditions, um, partly because, and it's only in the last couple of years that I've come to understand this. There is, there are emerging diseases, emerging diagnoses, which take time before it actually gets into the guidelines and into the mainstream medicine or whichever country
mm,
you're in.
yeah.
So I recently had a patient who had been exposed to a large amount of pesticide in a very short period of time. And then after that, he became more and more and more and more unwell. Now the pesticides gave him he wound up having like a pneumonia. Fine, went to
Okay.
hospital. That was sorted out. The doctors are now saying to him, "That's you're okay," but he's not okay.
Yeah.
And there's um, and because of having spent some time overseas, I know that there's a diagnosis called tilt, toxicant induced loss of tolerance,
Okay.
which is a subset of another range of another category of diseases, which is not. It is making its way into Australian medical circles, but not
Quite.
quite yet, which is mast cell activation syndrome. Now, Professor Pete, he's a professor of medicine at Griffith University, and he's all over mast cell
Mm-hmm.
because even though we may be slightly slower here in Australia to be embracing these new and emerging diseases, they're writing guidelines on this in the US and in Europe.
Okay.
You can't afford to wait for this stuff to come to your
To be a
shores.
massive issue before you start working on it, kind of
Right,
thing.
exactly, because patients like this particular patient and many of other patients like him, they're bounced around and eventually they're told it's head,
Yeah.
right? And that's not okay.
Mm.
So, yeah. So, with regards to complex chronic conditions, we know chronic conditions have been on the rise regardless. We're talking cardiovascular issues, diabetes, boom, 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 boom. It just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. And nobody's talking about, some really simple things, which I'm not saying is going to be the be all and end all of dealing with these diseases, but they make a serious dent.
Difference, yeah.
Diet, nutrition, movement. I mean, James Mukey, the 2020 Australian of the Year, has been going around giving talks about the fact that sugar can cause diabetes, and that the very fact we're not talking about it, the very fact that we don't seem to understand that sugar is not necessary for nutrition, for day-to-day eating, all the rest of it, and that type 2 diabetes is reversible.
Is it?
It is 100% reversible,
Okay, I
right?
didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's his message. So I actually went to a talk. He was giving a talk last Thursday at Kirribilli, and he's like everyone else, he's a little bit frustrated because
I can imagine.
yeah, right. When you have a reversible disease causing such burden on not just the economy but on families, you have to take that seriously.
Yeah,
And
you
why
do.
is that? Like, how is it that the average person still doesn't know that type 2 diabetes is reversible? Because doctors aren't talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors are still talking about it as being a progressive illness. Anyway, chronic diseases increasing, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Complex conditions increasing. That's the scary part as well. Because back in the day, 50 years ago, most people had one chronic condition, maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this,
Yeah,
that,
you're having
that.
a list of
And it's complex. And the problem with complex problems is that they require complex
treatment.
solutions.
Yeah.
Right? Now, complex doesn't mean complicated, but it
Mm-hmm.
is still not a pill that's going to fix all your problems. We need to get away from that mindset because it is killing us.
Mm.
Anyway, that's chronic conditions as I see it.
I love that. I really, really like the way, again, every time you talk or you answer a question, it really goes back to the foundation of where you come from, where it comes to your father's curiosity of always wanting to learn, and then inadvertently you then becoming curious and always wanting to learn. I guess the fact that you are constantly trying to think outside the box, and also have created a career where you're constantly thinking outside the box and ensuring that you're giving each patient that you see the best care possible. I think that's amazing. So with all this, there is obviously a foundation of health, and that we all pretty much adhere to. That includes, I guess, sleep, nutrition, body, and mindset. But how do all of these together compound together to actually ensure that we live a healthier life, I guess?
I think that and it actually goes back to a little bit of philosophy, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
believe that as an organism, as an animal, that you are generally speaking um, uh, programmed for survival.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say wellness. I didn't say optimization. I didn't say,
Just living.
just living,
Yeah.
just surviving. For survival, there are a lot of things that need to happen for survival. Okay. And that includes a beautiful dance between oxidation and oxidation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is a normal process of your body, which is why people assume that because I'm a functional medicine doctor that I'm, massively into supplements and stuff like that. They've got their place just like pharmaceuticals have their place.
Mm.
But if you are, jumping the therapeutic order, I'll get to that. But if you're jumping the therapeutic order to taking supplements before looking at the foundations of
Patient.
health, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're certainly not going to be learning what your body wants to do, and that is to have some basic foundations, Maslow's hierarchy of needs type
Yeah,
stuff, right?
exactly.
Security, just being able to survive. And then once you have survival stuff in place, by all means, have your sense of purpose and your love and your affection and your community and all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
But get that right first. All the things that you were talking about. The therapeutic order is something I subscribe to, and essentially there are 7 levels to it.
Yeah.
The basic level is about knowing, understanding the determinants of health for you,
For you, yeah.
right? And it's not just putting in all the good stuff, making sure that you get quality sleep, quantity too,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you've got good nutrition, blah, 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 blah. It's also removing that which are obstacles to health. This is basic stuff, right? So don't smoke, or,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. We also have to understand that we are evolutionary beings in a very strange 21st century world. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, from there, we then move on to, okay, we need to put in place that which is going to allow our bodies to heal like it wants to. So, okay, so for example, if you have high homocysteine, okay, we know from a 2021 paper that, and we've talked about homocysteine in context of inflammation and homocysteine in context of higher blood pressure,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the evidence has always been a bit, it's there, and we will talk about it. But 2021, we're talking, okay, so homocysteine actually affects like some of the receptors in the endothelium, so the inside lining of your blood vessels, and that's why it may cause knock-on effects for other
Other
issues.
issues in the body.
Now, what are some of the basic things that you can reduce homocysteine? If you get your homocysteine checked today and your homocysteine is over, I think it's like 12 or something as far as standard reference ranges go,
Mm-hmm.
Sullivan Nicolaides will actually print something there which actually says that homocysteine can be brought down with vitamin B6, B9, and B12.
Okay.
Because it can. As far as the pathways go, homocysteine is essentially methionine breaks down to homocysteine, and then it has to be recycled, right? It can be pushed down one pathway to glutathione via vitamin B6, and it needs the folate cycle to be running beautifully, which is B9 and B12. So that's just part of that. But, so you have to give your body the building blocks it needs to heal itself.
For sure.
Okay. Then, if there's any particular organ that's stressed, damaged, or being damaged, then we can target that. That's the third hierarchy here. Okay. So you've implemented all the basic stuff. Let's focus on that. So a lot of patients these days have got fatty liver,
Mm-hmm.
right? We know that in a good percentage of patients, fatty liver is a function of inflammation and a function of fructose overload. You take away, right, fructose in their diets, high fructose corn syrup, processed foods, high sugar foods, and you give them choline, and it actually clears their fatty liver.
Yeah. What type of where would you find choline?
Choline is found in eggs.
Okay.
So for you, you'd probably be needing about 550 milligrams of choline a day. Well, that's the RDA
Mm-hmm.
or RDI, and an egg has about 145, 150 milligrams.
So about 4 eggs.
Right.
5
Or
eggs.
liver, but nobody wants to talk about organ meats, so I
Yeah.
won't really get into it because everyone goes, oh yeah, yeah, and
I
then
do
nobody
like
actually does.
liver,
Oh,
so
do you?
yeah,
Oh,
I do.
there you go. Awesome, right?
Yeah.
So choline can be very important in context.
Mm-hmm.
So choline helps to clear out the liver, decrease inflammation, blah blah blah. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is where, okay, we need to actually make sure that the structural integrity of the animal is sound. If your breathing mechanically, your breathing mechanics are wrong, you're actually going to deoxygenate your brain constantly, chronically. You deoxygenate your body chronically. I mean, the rise of breath work in the last 2 years,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
Because there's a reason behind it, right? We actually know that patients who mouth breathe as opposed to nose breathe, especially overnight, more likely to wake up with headaches and have issues with their glucose control.
Mm-hmm.
Just two of the many issues when it comes to just oxygenation, right? So that's structural integrity. Then we can actually go in there with looking at natural substances to help. I am a fan of whole herbs as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to supplements, but anyway, much of the muchness. Then it's using pharmaceuticals, right? And they can be so important because
Yeah.
sometimes patients can't focus on anything else until their
Until the pain
pain.
goes away slightly. Yeah.
Absolutely, And then we get the high
Invasive.
intensity, the
Yeah, the
invasive stuff,
surgery.
the surgeries and
Mm-hmm.
this and that, which of course is inevitable for some people. Like I'm not talking about, meditating if your arm is falling off, right? So, but if you skip steps, then you accidentally in inadvertently yoke patients to medications for the rest of their life when they
Yeah, when
could
they
have
have it,
been.
could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so important that again the therapeutic order and that people a lot more because I've never really heard about it about the therapeutic order until you mentioned it at your presentation a couple of weeks ago. Obviously I was aware that looking at the body from a holistic point of view is very important and you have to really peel back the layers to make sure that whatever this pain is in your body there's not some sort of underlying issue before you then push. But in terms of the therapeutic order, that was something I'm not aware of, and I think it's important that people are aware of it
Mm.
because then, sorry, go on ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, you can make it your own, of course, right?
Hmm.
Every practitioner should. I mean, I think the original therapeutic order is actually a naturopathy thing, and I'm not
Okay.
a naturopath,
Yeah.
right? But the philosophy underlying it makes sense to me, you know.
Hmm.
And of course, it's not the I'm gonna withhold medications from you until you get your sleep right. No,
No, yeah,
it's not at all.
that just don't work.
This is not a. This is more about how much effort we put into certain things, how much emphasis we put into this when we're talking to our patients.
Hmm.
You know, that's all.
And we're almost finished, so I just wanted to touch. What are some of the biggest challenges that I guess you face right now, and I guess the whole healthcare ecosystem? You look like there's a few. What are your top two?
Okay. Um, I think that, of course, a certain amount of healthy skepticism is very important,
Hmm.
but there is an issue with tall poppy syndrome in Australia. There is an issue with curiosity. There is an issue with bigging up your neighbors who are doing new and exciting things.
Hmm.
And I think we need to be a lot more supportive here because if nobody agitates the cage,
And the status quo.
the status quo,
Hmm.
the door never springs open, right? Um, and of course, we have to be safe and we have to be prudent.
Hmm.
Like this, it's easy for people to start going for the jugular on that kind of stuff. We're not talking about that kind of thing, right? We're talking about the fact that there is some evidence for XYZ. Look at these journal articles from wherever. Let's give it a go, especially with patient consent, right?
Hmm.
You can't keep smashing someone back for that because nothing will change.
Hmm. Exactly.
So I think us needing to pull together and be a little bit more supportive is one aspect that needs to be encouraged here. Um, the other I think is patient empowerment. I see very little of that.
Hmm.
I think it's a function of the fact that many patients for many decades have become reliant on the pill and
Mm-hmm.
that prescription and loses sight of the fact that there's so much that they can do for themselves. Even sorting out sleep hygiene to
Yeah,
sleep better. That's something you can do for yourself, you know? And the evidence for sleep with regards to your immune system is overwhelming,
it is.
right?
Yeah.
But patients, you're the master of that. You can do that, right? You get to choose what you put in your mouth. You get to choose your what you give to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You get to choose when you eat. The evidence for fasting, for example. I mean, appropriate fasting,
Yeah.
you know,
Within reason.
within reason and this, that, and the other. But, it can actually rejuvenate how well stem cells act. Yeah, sorry, it rejuvenates stem cells. It can, help you with your insulin control, glucose control, insulin production. There's all these things are in your control, in your hands. And I think patients don't realize how profound those things can be.
Yeah.
You know, as far as the therapeutic order goes, blah blah blah. I mean, but I've had patients turn their life around by themselves with a bit of guidance.
Yeah.
They do it. And so I would definitely like to see more patients realize how much control they can take and how much change those very little actions can actually do. So
Amazing. And just to finish off, obviously at HPG we're a healthcare recruitment
oh yeah.
company and we recruit across all aspects of healthcare. But what are 3 tips that you'd like to give to someone who would like to take a similar career? I mean, your career path is very much off the beaten track kind of career path, but have you got 3 tips that you could give to someone um who kind of want to head in this direction?
Yep. Okay. So, we understand in context of Australia, you've got the colleges, and the colleges look after surgery, general practice, physicians, and so on and so forth. If you are thinking, well, I'd like to go down functional medicine instead, there isn't a college here in Australia.
Hmm.
There are colleges in the US, and so that's probably where I would start. Just going through their website, the Institute for Functional Medicine, for example, is a really good place to start because they will do all the modules that you would expect from a physician's course. So it'll be, cardiovascular, neurological, etc., etc., etc.
Hmm.
But then you start to know who the movers and the shakers are. And then once you do that, you start following them, listening to podcasts, and then before you know it, you're down the yellow brick road.
Beautiful.
So it is figuring out who those players are, following them, listening to what they have to say, being critical, of course. But most people these days are, they would be silly if they weren't
Yeah,
talking about things without referencing,
yeah, for sure.
right?
For sure.
Um, and as you start getting into this, you realize there's the number of people in universities and institutes working on longevity, fasting,
Hmm.
autophagy, mitophagy, stem cells, DNA SNPs, like all these wonderful, amazing things, all that knowledge. And then apparently it's only just that
Yeah.
for your guidelines for clinic. Come on,
Yeah, there's more out there.
right?
Yeah.
So check out IFM and other colleges similarly. In Australia, we have the Australasian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine. Um, they recently had a series of healthy debates where they got some amazing people, both sides of a debate. So, for example, they did one on cholesterol, and I assume statins as well. But anyway, cholesterol. They had Asim Malhotra, which is a cardiologist from the UK. They had
Hmm.
Ross Walker, cardiologist from Sydney. Um, there's other healthy debates. They've had Pran Yoganathan. He's a gastro from Sydney as well. Like these guys are con- conventional by all intents and purposes,
Hmm.
but so open-minded, asking the
I think that's
whys.
the key.
Oh, you know, looking under every stone. It's so cool to see not what someone knows, but how they're putting it together, how they're researching, how their curiosity.
Yeah, and I think that is medicine. Medicine is the willingness to constantly wanting to learn and to figure out why things work and to figure out how we can do things better.
Yeah.
because if we were to still be doing the same things that they were doing 200 years ago,
Yeah.
it would not be great. So obviously,
No.
there's always been an evolution of medicine. The more we research, the more we learn, and the more we end up changing the way we treat patients on a regular. So
That's right.
again, it always comes down to the
Yeah.
curiosity
And
and
then the
trying to roll
last
that
thing I would
stone.
be saying to practitioners, if this is something that they were interested in doing, if the first port of call for any disease process is a pill,
Mm.
just know that there's lots of other things. So just Google, and then go through PubMed, just PubMed,
Mm.
and you'll start to see it all.
There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Where can people reach you if they wanted to get in contact? Social media, website?
Yeah. So our website, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Twitter.
Even though I'm not very active on Twitter, but anyway, is
You're there.
Dr. So Dr. Olivia Lesslar, DrOliviaLesslar.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for being here. And everyone listening, thank you very much for listening with us today.
Thank you so much.